Hi everybody, my name is Jeremiah Kellogg and I'm the Systems Librarian at Eastern Oregon University. Today I want to show you how to install Apache2, MySQL, and PHP on a Debian server. Naturally, these are components of a LAMP server. I have already built my Debian server in a previous video, so if you haven't done that yet, you may want to do that. I also have another video on this topic, only it's using an Ubuntu server. And I went into more detail with that video than I plan to on this. So if you find at any point that maybe you're new to Linux and you don't fully understand what's going on, that might be a better video to watch. But if you do have some basic knowledge of Linux, I will show you how to go about installing Apache2, MySQL, and PHP. So the first thing I've done is I have gotten into my server, and again I have plenty of videos about how to SSH into servers and building virtual machines and that sort of thing. So if you're not at this point, you should go and watch one of those videos. The first thing I'm going to do is just to check and make sure I actually don't have these things installed, and I can do that with dpackage-l, and we'll get a list of all of the applications that are installed on this server. They're alphabetical, so I'm going to go to the top, and I see that I do not have Apache installed yet. Going further down, I'm looking for MySQL. I have put the apt repository for MySQL in here. Chances are you won't have to do that. This is kind of for my own purposes. Um, but everything should kind of follow the same kind of commands. What was the other thing? PHP. And I don't have PHP installed. So the first thing I want to do is install Apache, and I want to make sure it is in any of the repositories I have installed on this server. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, I do have another video that you can watch on my channel that gets into Linux repositories and how to determine what to use. More often than not, just use the defaults. It gets problematic if you put in too many apt repositories. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the command sudo apt cache show package Apache2 and enter and put in my password. So now on my screen I see all sorts of good information about Apache2. If I scroll up to the top, I can see what apt repository is being used for Apache2. And so judging from this information, I can run the standard command of sudo apt get install Apache2. And yes. Okay, so now I've installed Apache2, I've cleared my screen, and now I want to install MySQL. So I will run the sudo apt cache show package MySQL command. Let's see, my SQL server. And again, I get lots of information about the version of MySQL I'm about to install. So I actually have a couple of repositories that do this. I did install the MySQL apt repository directly from MySQL. Depending on your situation, that might not be the best way to go. I find it's best to kind of stick to as few repositories as possible. In any case, if I scroll up to the top, we see that I have a repository from the Oregon State University, as well as the MySQL apt Debian distribution. So what it's going to do is pick the more recent version, which is 5.7.21, rather than the 5.5.58, which is what I want. And I'm using an older version of Debian, and therefore the apt repository is not fully up to date. If you're using Debian 9, you're probably not going to be getting MySQL 5.5. So with that said, I do have other videos on my channel that describe how to set up an apt repository using MySQL's apt repository, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. So what I can do now is run my sudo apt get install MySQL server, and we'll run that, and yes, and we get a screen to enter our root password. So this is the password you will use to log into MySQL. So I'm just going to use my generic local development password of password. Do not do that on anything that is accessible outside of your own desktop. It's not a good idea to use easy passwords, as I'm sure you already know. Okay, so now we have successfully installed MySQL Server. I have the version I want, the 5.7.21. So now we can, let's just check to make sure things look good. We'll run the dpackage.-l command, so we can have a look and see, yes, we have MySQL Server, and the nice thing is, along with that, we got the MySQL common, so we don't have to worry about installing any of these separately. We're good to go. Okay, so we have installed Apache2 and MySQL. Now we want to install PHP. And again, I'm going to run my sudo apt get apt cache show package PHP. And so I see here I have PHP 7 available to me. And I'm getting it from the .deb repository, and this is one that I've installed previously. What I'm trying to do here is build a server that mimics a production server I have, and that's why I'm putting these things in. And again, if you're running into problems and things aren't working quite well, other videos on my channel talk about how to go about adding a repository that has the version of the software you need. So the first thing I'm going to do is run my sudo apt get install PHP, and I think it's 7.0. Whoops. And yep. So we will download that. Okay, so the installation has finished, and PHP has a few more packages that are dependent on any LAMP server. So what we need to do is install those. And the first one is we will do sudo apt get install lib Apache2 -mod -php. And so that's going to allow PHP and Apache to communicate a little better. Another good one, or one that's necessary in our case, is I will sudo apt get install PHP My Sql, and so this is the package that will allow MySQL and PHP to communicate with one another. So at this point, depending on what you're using the LAMP server for, there are other PHP modules that you may consider. I know, for instance, that what I'm using this server for, I'm going to need sudo apt get install php -cli, and this allows PHP to be run in the command line. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Another one that I think I need is sudo apt get install php-gd. And yes. And I think the last thing I want to do is sudo apt get install php common. Okay, it's already installed, so I don't have to worry about that. So the takeaway here is be sure to look at whatever application you're developing that requires the Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP environment. Make sure you're installing everything they tell you to. I have run into many instances where they don't always tell you exactly what you're after, but your error log reports certainly will give you a sense of what you have to do. If there are problems with PHP, it's likely you haven't added any of the optional components that I've just installed. Okay, so we have installed all of our components, the Apache2, MySQL, and PHP. The last thing I want to do is make sure I installed things properly. So in order to make sure everything is up to date, I'm going to run sudo systemctl restart Apache2. Just to be sure, and then I'm going to change directories, and let's see, var ww and html and list content. So we do have an index there, and one thing that I want to make sure to do is add a PHP page. So I'm going to do sudo nano test.php, and in here I will write some PHP code, PHP info, which is the function that will give us information about our PHP installation. So PHP, and then let's close that out, and everything looks good. Control X, yes, I want to save. And now we can go view this through a web browser. And to do that, we want to run I guess the newer command is IP address. And that gives us our IP address. Mine is this here. So what I'm going to do is just move this to the side and bring up a browser, and I'm going to put in my IP address 10.3.20.30. And so Apache has been installed properly. We have our It Works page. It's always nice to see that. And the other thing I'm going to run is my, what did I call it? Test.php. And so our PHP is up and running properly too. And of course, if there are issues in either case, it could be any number of things, Google is your friend. So that is how we would install a LAMP server on a Debian distribution of Linux. I hope you found this video to be helpful, and hope to see you in other videos. Thanks for watching.